Hi, everybody. This is Dan Stolbarger. Welcome to this week's KFIR Middle East update. It's the week of Resurrection Sunday. Amen. He's risen. He is risen indeed. So it's the week of April 2nd. And here are the things that are taking place in the Middle East, specifically Israel. Remember, make sure you grab the PDF PowerPoint. You can get it on the YouTube site or at our website at holygroundexplorations.com. We always start off with our little Newsbites. Palestinian elections are coming up. I can't help but read this to you. It says that that terrorists are all set to win Palestinian elections. The Palestinian Central Election Committee recently announced that any Palestinian who wants to run in the upcoming elections, quote, must not be convicted of a crime or a felony against honor or integrity. That is, of course, unless the crime includes murdering Jews or involvement in terrorism. I say that because the biggest threat to Mahmoud Abbas happens to be Marwan Barghouti, who's in prison serving 5 lifetime sentences for murdering Jews. He's actually seen as a hero, and the word out is that he deserves to become president because of his convictions regarding terrorism. Now, there's the candidate for peace for you, isn't there? Well, COVID, Israel, super speedy Israeli COVID test gets European approval. Airport rollout is planned. Don't want to get into the technology of it, but the bottom line is that this test takes 20 seconds of analysis, believing that if this is the case, is approved, which it has been, it will possibly aid in the resumption of international travel. Once again, here at Holy Ground, we can't wait until Israel opens again. Now, back to Newsbites. A quarter of American Jews have personally experienced anti-Semitism in the last 5 years. This was a survey commissioned by the Anti-Defamation League. And let that sink in. A quarter. And many would say, what's the big deal? There's no anti-Semitism. Right. And then, last up for Newsbites, I don't know if you noticed, but this week, Iran and China has signed a strategic economic agreement. The contract is for 25 years. It will see Iran leasing its natural resources to China for the cash that the Islamic regime so desperately needs. There's two bedfellows, Iran and China. Whoa. Okay, let's get into our major articles for this week. Back to Corona, anti-Semitism, lying, libels. The blood libel, Corona, we call this Corona Palestinian Authority libel. The PA's found a silver lining of the COVID-19 pandemic by using it to breathe new life into its medical libel accounts or proclamations or acclamations or whatever. According to the Palestinians, Israel mistreats terrorist prisoners, intentionally murdering them by neglect, but more specifically, denial for treatment and using COVID-19 as a lethal weapon to murder these political prisoners. Once again, what they're saying is that the Israelis are infecting all Palestinian prisoners with COVID. Again, another form of blood libel. Now, Joe Biden and his Iranian sanctions. The Biden administration intends to present a new proposal to Iran to return to nuclear negotiations. We know this to be a fact. It was reported on Monday. An article in Politico cited two people familiar with the proposal who said it requires Iran to reduce some nuclear activities, such as work on advanced centrifuges, etc., to the 20% purity level. And in exchange, Washington would offer sanction relief on the economically hit Islamic Republic. According to one official, the details were still being worked out, and it wasn't all that certain that Iran will accept these terms. They may just want to hang on and see if they can get a better deal. But the other source said that the proposal was, quote, more than anything else, it was trying to get the ball rolling once again. It appears that Biden desperately wants to renegotiate the nuclear deal with Iran. And then another update for COVID in Israel. Cops are no longer instructed to enforce any mask wearing outside. Mandatory mask rule remains in effect inside, but basically the handwriting's on the wall. It's reported to be reduced to, the concept will be reduced to zero requirements whatsoever. Now, Israel also has what's called the traffic light plan. And they said for the very first time since the induction of this traffic light plan, which essentially took the different cities, villages, etc. in Israel and said, this is a red district, this is a yellow district in regards to COVID. But they're saying now they're calculating that there are no cities or towns that have high infection rates, and Israel no longer has any red or yellow infectious cities. Now, back to Biden, back to the Palestinians, and shall I say, here we go again. Occupied territory. That phrase, occupied territory. We're going to hear a lot in the upcoming weeks and months about the 1967 borders. So here's an article here. The United States country reports, this is from the State Department, first being released by the Biden administration. They reaffirm that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, but they make reference now to the Palestinian Authority's rights to sections of Jerusalem, while introducing the notion that Israel, and under Trump, this was taken off the books, stricken from the books. Now it's being reinserted. The phrase is that Israel is occupying the West Bank. And so even though the acknowledgement of Jerusalem as the capital, and even though Biden is reaffirming Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, this is a major concern just in the language regarding the so-called occupied territories of the West Bank. And then last article here in terms of Biden and the Palestinians, he has quietly given the Palestinians over $100 million over the last 2 weeks. $75 million to help their economy, $25 million to deal with vaccination COVID issues. This obviously is Biden's plan to help regain trust after Trump. And the funding plan represents a major shift in the U.S. approach to the Palestinians, coming on the heels of Biden's talk, what I just referred to as the West Bank as being occupied territory. So momentum is starting to build back to this so-called two-state solution. The question that I have is whatever happened to the Taylor Force Initiative, whatever that our Congress and our president have already put on the books, accepted. Taylor Force issue is regarding pay for slay. None of the money that we give to the Palestinians can go for stipends for terrorists. How in the world are we policing where that money is being given and how it's being used? $100 million. And to this point in time, Abbas has never made the statement that he's going to back away from giving massive amounts of money to terrorists who have killed Israelis. All I have to do is hearken back to the very first article where we talked about this guy that's serving five lifetime sentences, Marwan Barghouti. Is it possible he's the next president, the next prime minister of the Palestinians? He would serve in that capacity while being in jail? That's the Middle East. That's what we're looking at. That's our report for this week. And I go back to the very beginning. Know this. Despite how crazy the world seems to be, especially the Middle East, God is in control. We know who holds Israel in the palm of his hands. This is our God. This is the God of the resurrection. He is the resurrection and life. We have no worries. He is in control. God bless you. Once again, happy Resurrection Sunday. God bless you all. Until next week, shalom from Dan.